Well, India is seen as a great success story globally because of the fact that, like China, it's supposed to be one of the gainers from globalization. It is seen as an economy that has benefited from more trade, more capital flows, and is becoming one of these giant economies. But I think the people who look at this tend to have a slightly unbalanced view because they ignore the fact that we've had a very, very strange kind of capitalist development in the recent past. We've had a development that didn't actually create employment. And so more than half of our workforce is still stuck in very low level, low productivity agriculture. Another 20-30% is stuck in very low grade services. So we really haven't had a development transition in terms of shifting people out of low productivity activities. And along with that, therefore, we get all these failures in terms of human development. We have very high unemployment, we have very high levels of poverty, we have very poor health indicators, we have very low levels of education, and we have terrible nutrition indicators. Our calorie consumption is somewhere down there with most of sub-Saharan Africa. So I think the pattern of neoliberalism has been one where there's been a lot of emphasis on the growth of large corporations, and these have benefited from a close relationship with the state, a kind of crony capitalism, which has generated rapid growth in terms of the corporate sector. But it has not delivered employment, and it hasn't delivered a structural transformation. Well, Brics is an interesting thing because it's very hard to think of a formation that gets created because some merchant banker writes in a newspaper article saying that these are economies that are similar. But that's really the origin. However, despite the peculiar origins, it is true that they have become increasingly oriented to talking to each other, increasingly oriented towards trying to develop common platforms for certain issues. So it's an interesting development. And certainly, given the way that the global economy has been hegemonized by the United States and Europe, it's always good to have alternative formulations, for sure. Having said that, I'm not particularly happy about having another club of elite developing countries, if you see what I mean, or elite countries among the others, who then decide on the rules of the game for everybody else. So I think the Brics, if they really want to make an impact, will have to enlarge and democratize and be more concerned also with the interests of not just the corporations in their own countries, but the people in their own countries. Yes, well, I think the hegemony of the United States is on the decline, and that's very evident in different ways. They are trying to manage it. They're trying to prevent it and to, prevent it from happening sooner and faster. But I think there's no doubt that there is a medium-term tendency towards that decline. But, often it is the powers in decline that are the most dangerous in terms of using various instruments to try and at least maintain that power for as long as possible. So I think that, and it's also true that the United States has been here before. In the 1970s, after it broke the link to the dollar and gold, everybody thought this is another period when the US economy will decline. But they came back, and the period of globalization has been also a phase of the reassertion of the United States and the US empire, in fact. So we don't know what will happen in that sense. They may well reassert themselves once again, but definitely there are significant shifts in terms of the rest of the world economy. It really depends how the other countries play it, and particularly the large developing countries, the so-called emerging nations. It's unfortunate in some ways that the word globalization has become a word with so many negative connotations, because it is what we are experiencing is a very corporate-driven globalization, one in which the interests of large corporations dominates over the interests of citizens and of workers and of everyone else. So I think it's a pity because if you remember, the slogans of the left used to be about proletarian internationalism, about cosmopolitanism. We actually valued the fact that national boundaries were broken. We used to see a gain in the idea of workers of the world uniting. We used to find it something positive. this exchange of ideas and of people. So we need to see how we can alter the fact of global integration, which, as you mentioned, is now inevitable, which we really cannot avoid anymore. We need to see how to bring that back into a much more progressive strategy. And I would argue that that progressive strategy doesn't mean that you close your eyes or your mind to new ideas or even new goods or new innovations or anything. But you do note that it is possible sometimes to restrict trade, it is possible and necessary to control capital flows, and it is important to make sure that the interests of citizens, the rights of citizens, are delivered nationally, because that is still the terrain in which those rights are played out, negotiated over, and delivered. But that all of this is done within an internationalist context where we share the positives, where we share the possibilities for sharing innovation and the fruits of technology, and where we try and advance as a community of nations in which each nation is trying to ensure the social and economic rights of its citizens, rather than one in which nations are in competition even while they're claiming to be globally integrated.